There's a quiet arithmetic you do sometimes, and I don't think you mean to. You see another woman's life, a friend, a sister, someone from church, someone whose family photos you happen to see, and almost before you can stop it, the comparing begins. Her children seem to have turned out so well. They call her, they visit, they're doing fine. Her marriage lasted. There's still someone across the table. Her health held. She moves like someone 10 years younger. There's money where you have worry, ease where you have strain, and a kind of shine on her life that yours doesn't seem to have. And you do the math the way you do, and the answer always comes out the same. She got the better portion, and you got this. And it isn't only the big things. It's the small ones that ambush you, the ones you'd be embarrassed to admit even mattered. The way her kitchen looks in a photo, the trip she took, the casual mention of a thing she can afford that you've quietly done without for years. Comparison doesn't need much to get going. A single image, a passing comment, and the machine starts up again, tallying, ranking, placing your life somewhere below hers on a ledger no one asked you to keep. It's a strange kind of self-torture, really. Voluntary, private, and almost impossible to stop once it begins. And the gatherings are the hardest, aren't they? The reunions, the holidays, the times everyone is together and the updates go around the table. Someone's son just got promoted. Someone's daughter just had another baby and lives close enough to visit every week. Someone just got back from somewhere lovely. And you nod, and you're glad, and you mean it. And at the very same time, something tightens. Because every update is a measuring stick laid quietly against your own life. You can leave one of those afternoons having said all the right warm things and still drive home with a heaviness you can't quite explain. That heaviness has a name, and the name is comparison. And you're not a bad woman for carrying it home. And it helps to remember, in those moments, that an update is not a verdict. When someone shares their good news around the table, they are reporting one bright fact, not handing down a judgment on your worth, even though it can land that way in a tired heart. Her son's promotion says something about her son. It says nothing whatsoever about you, or your value, or whether your life mattered. The comparison adds a meaning that was never in the news itself. You can learn, slowly, to hear the good thing as simply a good thing in someone else's life, and let it stay over there where it belongs, instead of dragging it home and making it a measurement of yours. And the worst part isn't even the comparison. It's the thing that rides in right behind it. The envy. That small, hot, ashamed feeling towards someone you actually love. Someone you'd never wish ill. You don't want to feel it. You know better. You'd be mortified if anyone could see it. So you push it down and smile and say how happy you are for her. And you are, partly. But underneath, there's that other thing, the resentment you can't fully kill. And on top of that, a second layer of shame for feeling the first thing at all. It's an exhausting little machine, and it runs quietly, and it steals the joy right out of your own life. Because you can't enjoy what you have while you're busy measuring it against what she has. And it gets worse with the years. In a way nobody warns you about. When you were young, comparison at least had a future in it. You could tell yourself there was still time, that your turn might come, that the gap could close. But further along the road, the comparing takes on a heavier note, because some of the doors have closed now. You can't go back and raise the children differently, or choose the other husband, or take the path you didn't take. And so the comparison stops being about what might still be, and starts being about what can never now be. And that is a sharper, sadder kind of envy, the kind that has given up on catching up. If that's the shade of it you carry, I especially want you to stay with me, because the word at the end of this is for exactly that. Because the deepest ache in late life comparison isn't really about the things at all. It's about the quiet verdict you've started to hand yourself, that the shape of your life is now mostly settled, and that the final tally came out lower than other people's. It can feel like the score is in, the game is over, and you didn't win. But that verdict is built entirely on counting the wrong column. And by the end of this, I hope you'll see that the most important number on the board was one you'd stopped even looking at, and that it changes the whole final score. And here is something steadying about a life that's further along. You have, by now, more evidence than a younger person could possibly have that the visible portions are not what they promised to be. You've watched enviable things turn out hollow, and humble things turn out to hold. You've seen money fail to make people happy, and health fail to make them kind, and full houses fail to make them peaceful. You are not naive about the shine anymore. That hard-won clarity is itself a kind of wealth. And it makes you, of all people, ready to finally believe what this psalm says. Because you've seen with your own eyes that the visible column doesn't deliver what it advertises. I want to sit with you in that, honestly, without making you feel worse for it. Because I'm about to introduce you to a man in the Bible who felt exactly this. Admitted it out loud in a song that became scripture, and very nearly lost his faith over it. And the word he landed on at the end? A single Hebrew word that happened to belong to his own family for a very particular reason is, I think, the quiet cure for the whole exhausting machine. Stay with me. And I promise you this won't be the kind of empty comfort that just tells you to count your blessings and feel ashamed for not feeling better. I know that doesn't work. You can't scold yourself out of envy, and you can't gratitude list your way past it if the thing underneath hasn't shifted. What we're after here is the thing underneath, the actual root the comparing grows out of, because if that moves, the envy loosens on its own. The way a weed comes up easily once you've finally got under the root, instead of just snapping off the top. And getting under the root is mostly a matter of finding out what you actually believe your life is worth, measured by. As long as, deep down, you believe your worth is the visible portion, the outcomes, the relationships, the health, the accomplishments others can see, then comparison is simply the natural result, and no amount of willpower will stop it. You'll keep measuring because you believe that's where the worth is kept. The only thing that ever truly stops the comparing is a genuine relocation of where you believe your worth lives. Move that, and the envy has nothing left to feed on. That's the work this psalm is doing, gently underneath the words. The song is the 73rd song, and it was written by a man named Asaph. He wasn't a nobody. He was one of the chief worship leaders in all of Israel, a man who led the music in the house of God, who wrote songs the whole nation sang, a spiritual man, a faithful man. And listen to how he begins his confession, because it is breathtakingly honest. He says, "But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled, my steps had nearly slipped, for I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." Stop there for a moment, because of what he says envy almost did to him. He says his feet almost slipped. His steps nearly went out from under him. He's not describing a minor flaw, a little character blemish. He's describing something that very nearly knocked him off his feet entirely, that almost took down a faithful worship leader's whole walk with God. That's how powerful the comparing is. We treat envy like a small, petty thing, hardly worth mentioning. Asaph treats it like a sheet of ice that almost killed him. And if you've ever felt how comparison can sour a whole season, how it can poison your prayers and steal your sleep and make you bitter toward people you love, then you know he's telling the truth. It is not a small thing. It almost took him down. It can do real damage to you, too. And here's the quiet cruelty of it. Envy is the one sin that doesn't even give you the brief pleasure most temptations offer. Anger at least feels powerful for a moment. Other appetites at least taste sweet before they turn. But envy never feels good, not even for a second. It just corrodes. It sits in your chest and sours your own blessings and gives you nothing in return but a lower opinion of your own life. It is, as someone once said, the one vice that makes its owner miserable on the very first sip, which means letting it go costs you nothing you'll miss. You are not giving up a pleasure. You are putting down a weight that was only ever hurting the one who carried it. And once you really see that the envy was only ever poisoning you, never touching the person you envied, something in you can finally want to be free of it for your own sake, not out of guilt. This isn't about becoming a better, holier woman who has conquered a shameful flaw. It's about mercy toward yourself. You have carried this low, corroding thing long enough, and it has cost you joy you'll never get back, and you deserve to set it down. Not because you ought to, but because you, of all people, have suffered under it the most and need the relief the most. So let this be permission to be kind to yourself about all of it. The comparing, the envy, the years you've spent measuring. You weren't being wicked. You were being human, doing the thing every human heart does when it loses sight of its true portion. There is no need to add self-contempt to the pile now. The same God who left Asaph's confession in the book without condemning him does not stand over you with a frown either. He understands exactly why the comparing started, and he is not waiting for you to grovel about it. He's simply holding out the better portion, the way you'd hold out your hand to someone who'd been counting pennies, and saying gently, "You can stop now. It was always yours." And notice the second remarkable thing. He says it out loud. He doesn't hide the envy, doesn't dress it up, doesn't pretend a spiritual man like him would never feel something so low. He just confesses it, plainly, in a holy song. I was envious. And the fact that God left that confession in the Bible, called it Scripture, is its own quiet gift to you. Because I think part of what's been weighing on you is the shame of feeling this at all. The sense that a good Christian woman shouldn't compare, shouldn't envy, and that the feeling itself proves something is wrong with you. But here is a worship leader in the songbook of God saying the exact thing you've been ashamed to admit. You're not disqualified by the feeling. You're in the company of the faithful. And isn't it a relief to not have to be above it? So much of the tiredness of the Christian life, for women especially, comes from the performance of being fine, of being the strong one, the grateful one, the one who would never stoop to something as small as envy. Asaph drops the performance entirely. He just tells the truth in front of God. I saw their lives, and I wanted them, and it nearly wrecked me. And God did not strike him down for it. God preserved his honesty as holy writ. So you can put down the performance too. You can come to God with the real, ungenerous, comparing thoughts exactly as they are. Because hiding them was never protecting you. It was only leaving them to fester in the dark. There's a particular freedom in saying the ungenerous thing to God specifically. You can't say it to your friend. It would hurt her and shame you. You can barely say it to yourself without flinching. But God already sees it, fully, and loves you anyway, fully. And so His presence is the one place in the universe where the thing can finally be brought into the light without costing you anything. And things tend to lose their grip in the light. The envy you name honestly to God is already weaker than the envy you've been hiding, because shame feeds on secrecy, and you've just taken away its food. If this is naming something you've kept quiet, I'd love to know you're here. You don't have to say whose life or what you've envied. Just write the word honest in the comments. Let it stand for, this is the thing I've never said out loud. And if you'd like to keep walking through scripture with me like this, one hidden word at a time, I'd be so glad if you'd subscribe. Now, here's what I want you to see about how Asaph gets free. Because it's not what you'd expect. He doesn't get free by finally getting what the others had. His circumstances don't change at all. What changes is one thing: his vantage point. He says he wrestled with it, turned it over and over, and it was a wearisome, miserable task that got him nowhere. And then comes the turn, in a single line. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end. He went into God's presence, and from that vantage point, the eternal one, the long view, what had looked so enviable suddenly looked different. He saw that the shine he'd been coveting was more fragile than it appeared, that the things he'd been measuring his life against were not the lasting things he'd imagined them to be. And that is the first piece of the cure. Comparison is not, at its root, a circumstance problem. It's a vantage point problem. You are standing at one angle, the angle where you can see everyone else's outsides and only your own insides. And from that angle, of course your life looks like it's losing. You're comparing her highlight reel to your behind the scenes. You see her grown children at the holiday table. You don't see the phone calls that don't come, the worries she doesn't post. You see the intact marriage. You don't see what it costs behind the door. You are not comparing your life to her life. You're comparing your whole, messy, fully known life to the small, polished piece of hers that you happen to be able to see. No wonder you lose. The comparison was rigged from the start, by the simple fact that you know everything about your life and almost nothing about hers. There's an old truth in this that's worth saying plainly. You are comparing your blooper reel to everyone else's highlight film. You have a front row seat to every disappointment, every failure, every worry of your own life, and a carefully edited glimpse of theirs. The woman whose family looks so perfect at the gathering goes home to her own private ache that she's just as careful to hide as you are to hide yours. There is no life without its hidden weight. The ones that look effortless from the outside are simply the ones whose owners are good at the same hiding you do. If you could see the whole of any life you envy, the envy would mostly evaporate, replaced, more often than not, by compassion. I have watched this happen. The moment someone learns what was really going on behind a life they'd envied, and the envy collapses instantly into something gentler. You find out the woman with the perfect family is quietly heartbroken about one of those children. You find out the comfortable couple has a private grief they carry behind the smiling photos. And in that moment, you wouldn't trade places for anything. And you feel a little ashamed you ever wanted to. The truth about other people's lives is almost always humbling to our envy. We covet what we can see precisely because we can't see the rest. If we could, we'd mostly just want to pray for each other. But now I want to give you the deepest part, the word itself, because it's the thing that finally sets Asaph free, and it has a secret in it. Near the end, he writes, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." My portion. The Hebrew word is cheleq, and it means your portion, your share, your allotment, the piece of the inheritance that's been assigned to you. It's a word about division, about who gets what. And Asaph chooses it on purpose, because of who he was. Here is the secret. Asaph was a Levite, and the tribe of Levi was the one tribe in all of Israel that received no land. When the promised land was divided up and every other tribe got its portion, its fields, its hills, its inheritance to pass down to its children, the tribe of Levi got nothing. No territory, no acreage. Because God had said something specific to them, something no other tribe was told. I am your portion and your inheritance. The historian Josephus notes the same arrangement. The Levites, alone among the tribes, held no land of their own. They lived instead from what was brought to the house of God. So Asaph, by birth, by law, was a man who could never own what other men measured their lives by. He could never point to land and say, "That's mine, that's my worth, that's what I'll leave behind." By design, the only portion he had was God. Sit with how strange and deliberate that arrangement was. God could have given the Levites land like everyone else and simply added a spiritual role on top. Instead, he singled out one tribe and arranged their entire existence so that they had to live without the very thing that everyone else measured security and worth by. It was almost as if God wanted a living, visible demonstration in the middle of his people of a different kind of wealth. A whole tribe whose lives quietly said, "It is possible to have none of what the world counts, and to be utterly provided for, and even rich, because the portion you have is God." The Levites were the proof, walking around, that the thing everyone else was scrambling to accumulate was not, in the end, the thing that made a person secure. And you, in your own way, may be more of a Levite than you realize. If life has taken some of the visible portions from you, if your health is not what it was, if money is tight, if the family is scattered or smaller than you'd hoped, then you have been quietly pushed into the very position the Levites were placed in on purpose, the position of having to find your security somewhere other than the visible stuff. That feels like loss. But it can become the doorway to the one discovery the comfortable often never make, because they never have to. That God himself, as your portion, is enough, and is more solid than any of the things you've had to live without. And there is a dignity he is offering you in this, underneath the loss. The world will tell you that a life with less money, less health, less family nearby, is a smaller, poorer, more pitiable life. God says the opposite about the tribe he loved enough to make landless on purpose. In his eyes, the woman who has learned to live on him as her portion is not the poor relation at the table. She is the one who found the treasure the others are still looking for. Your hard, stripped-back season is not a mark of his neglect. It may be the very setting in which you become rich in the only way that lasts. Do you see what he's doing, then, in this psalm about envy? He is a man who, more than almost anyone, had grounds to feel he'd been shorted. Everyone else got land, he got none. If anyone could have spent his life comparing and coming up empty, it was a Levite. And instead, at the end of his wrestling, he reaches for the very word that defined his tribe's apparent poverty, portion, and he turns it inside out. Yes, I have no land. Yes, by the world's arithmetic, I got the smallest share of anyone. But God is my portion, and a portion like that cannot be lost, cannot shrink, cannot be outshone by anyone else's, cannot be taken when your health goes, or your money goes, or the people go. The thing he'd been taught to think of as having nothing turned out to be the one inheritance that nothing could touch. And think about what that means for the timing of your life right now. The portions other people compare, the land, the money, the health, even the children's nearness, every one of them is the kind of thing that can be lost. People do lose them. The comfortable can be ruined. The healthy can fall ill. The close family can fracture. The full house can empty. Everything in the column you've been envying is, by its nature, losable. But the portion Asaph found is the one thing in the universe that the passing of years cannot diminish. As the visible portions of every life thin out with age, and they do for everyone, eventually, the one portion that holds is the one you can't see and can't lose. You may be closer than you think to having quietly the most secure portion of anyone you know. Because the woman whose life looks enviable from the outside has, in a sense, more to lose and less practice at losing it. When the hard seasons come for her, and they come for everyone, she may find she built her security on portions that can be taken and have nowhere to stand when they go. Whereas you, who have already had to learn to stand on God when the visible things thinned, will be standing on the one ground that holds. The very hardship that makes you envy her now may be the thing quietly teaching you the steadiness she hasn't had to learn yet. You are not behind her. You may, in the things that last, be further along. So let's bring this home, to your quiet arithmetic, to the comparing you do when no one can see. Here is the lie underneath it all, that life is a fixed pile of good things, divided up unfairly, and somebody else got the bigger share, and you got shorted. That her portion proves something about your worth, that you came up small, that God gave you less, that you're the one who lost. And as long as you believe your portion is the visible stuff, the children's outcomes, the lasting marriage, the health, the comfort, the things you can line up next to hers and measure, then you will compare forever. And you will lose forever, because there will always be someone whose visible portion looks bigger than yours. That's the trap that has no bottom. Even the people you envy are envying someone. The woman whose life looks complete to you is, at this very moment, looking at someone else's and feeling the same hollow tug you feel. The comparison ladder has no top rung. It goes up forever. And everyone on it, all the way up, is straining toward the one above. To play that game is to sign up for a discontent that can never be satisfied. Because it was never about an actual amount. It was about the comparing itself, which manufacturers lack no matter how much you have. The only way to win it is to step off the ladder entirely, which is exactly what a different portion lets you do. And stepping off that ladder is not the same as giving up or settling for less. It's the opposite. It's discovering you were reaching for less the whole time. The people frantically climbing are reaching for portions that shrink and spoil and get left behind at the end. To step off is to turn around and find you were already holding the better thing, the lasting thing, while you were busy straining upward for the lesser ones. Contentment, the real kind, has never been about lowering what you want. It's about finally wanting the thing that was always already yours, and seeing at last how much greater it is than the things you were chasing. But what if your real portion was never in that column at all? What if, Like Asaph, the thing you have is not the land that other people can see and measure, but the one inheritance that doesn't appear in the comparison because it can't be compared. God Himself, yours, fully, forever. A portion that does not get smaller when someone else's looks bigger. Your children's choices cannot reduce it. Her intact marriage cannot outvalue it. Your thinning bank account cannot touch it. You have been grieving over the size of a portion that was never the real one. The real one was never up for division. It was given to you whole. And a whole portion is a thing you can finally rest in, because there's nothing left to win. When what you have is God Himself, entire and unshrinkable, the frantic measuring has nowhere to go. There's no higher amount to reach for, no one's share that could make yours smaller, no comparison that could come out badly, because the thing you've been given isn't on the scale at all. That's what rest from comparison actually is, not winning the contest at last, but discovering you were never required to be in it, that your inheritance was settled long before the comparing started, and settled in your favor, in full. That phrase is worth sitting with, settled in your favor, because comparison has had you living as though the verdict on your life were still out, still being decided, still possibly going against you depending on how the tally turns out. But if your portion is God, then the most important verdict was rendered long ago, and it was good, and it cannot be appealed or reduced by anyone else's circumstances. You are not waiting to find out whether your life measures up. The measuring is done, and you are an heir, and the inheritance is secure, and nothing in anyone else's life can shrink your share by even a little. And I want to say something tender, because comparison is so good at lying about your worth. The fact that your life looks different from hers does not make it a lesser life. It is not a failed attempt at her life. It is your life, with its own portion, much of which she cannot see and would perhaps envy if she could. You are not behind. You are not the one who lost. You are simply standing at the angle where everyone looks richer than you, and from God's angle, where the only portion that lasts is counted, you are an heir of the one thing no one can take. So please, hear this against every voice that says your life is the lesser one. The God who made you did not hand you a second-rate existence and save the good lives for other women. He gave you your own life, with its own shape and its own portion, and He gave you Himself inside it, the same whole portion He gave the most blessed-looking woman you know. You did not get less of God because your circumstances are harder. He does not come in smaller amounts to people with smaller bank accounts or lonelier tables. The portion is the same, full size, for the woman in the bright life and the woman in the hard one. And that means, in the only accounting that finally matters, you have exactly as much as anyone. All of Him. So what does this look like? In an ordinary day this week, here is the small, real thing. The next time you catch the arithmetic starting, the comparing, the inventory of what she has and you don't, try not to scold yourself for it, the way Asaph didn't pretend he was above it. Just notice it, and then do the one thing he did: change your vantage point. Step, even for a moment, out of the angle where you're measuring outsides against insides, and into God's presence, your own small sanctuary, wherever you can find a quiet minute, and say one true sentence: God, you are my portion. Not, I should have more. Not, she got the better life. Just, you are my portion. And that portion cannot be lost. And if you can, Name one piece of your actual portion out loud. One good thing that is truly yours, that no comparison can take. Not to win the arithmetic. To remember you were never supposed to be doing the arithmetic at all. So let me leave you with this, and I'll keep it gentle. A faithful man almost slipped and fell over the very thing you do quietly, comparing his portion to everyone else's, and coming up short. He didn't get free by finally getting what they had. He got free by changing where he stood, and by remembering the one word that belonged to his landless tribe: portion. He had no land, and he discovered he had the only inheritance that lasts. So have you. Your portion was never the thing you keep measuring and losing. Your portion is God Himself, whole, yours, unshrinkable, impossible to outshine. The comparison was always rigged, because the one thing that actually counts was never in the column you were staring at. So when the arithmetic starts again, and it will, step out of that angle, just for a breath, and say the true thing: He is my portion. And let the quiet of that be enough, because it is far more than enough, and far more than anyone else's visible life, however bright it looks from where you're standing. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.